So one magical things that happens at 10 hertz is sensory input is amplified. So for an athlete, if I'm trying to make a free throw, I can feel the ball in my hand. I can really feel the tension in each finger. That rim, I see 10 things on that rim because I'm
Hmm.
at 10 hertz. If I'm at 40, 50, 60 hertz, I'm only seeing the rim
Hmm.
as opposed to all the things that create the scale of the rim. So in
Hmm.
athletic performance, 10 hertz is magical because now you're reacting to whatever is going on as opposed to thinking about what is going on, because then you're not an athlete.
Welcome back to the Perpetual Growth Podcast, the show where we explore the strategies, insights, and stories that help you to grow your business, strengthen your relationships, and elevate your health. Because growth isn't just about what you achieve, it's about who you become along the way. Now, before we dive in, quick ask. If you get value from these conversations, follow the show, share the episode with someone chasing high performance, and leave a review. That's how we continue bringing in guests like today's. If you've ever felt distracted when it mattered most, if you've ever underperformed in a moment you trained for, if you've ever known you were capable of more but couldn't quite access it on demand, today's episode is going to change how you think about performance. Dr. Izzy Justice is a pioneering sports neuroscientist, executive coach, and best-selling author. He's conducted over 18,000 live EEG brain scans during real performance moments. Not in theory, not in labs, but in the seconds before someone tries to be their best. He's worked with elite athletes, Fortune 500 executives, and leaders across industries, helping them access flow state on command. And here's the kicker. He says you only need to be your best version one or two times a day, and it takes just seconds to do it. Dr. Izzy Justice, welcome to the Perpetual Growth Podcast.
Zach, thank you so much for having me and for that wonderful introduction. I'm really excited to have this dialogue to you and connect with your audience.
Yeah, me as well, very much so. Now, Dr. Izzy, I always start here because I think it tells me a lot about how someone thinks and their current stage of life. What does growth mean to you right now in this season of your life?
Yeah, thank you. What a great question and a good place to start. And before answering it directly, I will tell you how my question to that answer has evolved now that I'm
Hmm.
almost 60 years old. And
Hmm.
like most people in your teenage years, I think your goals are to, get a certain grade, or if you're a student athlete, to achieve a certain level of success or get into a certain type of college. And then you get to college and you want to get a good job, and then you want to make a good income or get a good title or a good level or a new house and those kinds of things. And so
Hmm.
I went through assuming growth meant those things.
Hmm.
And I've shared this publicly before when I speak, but I really do have a lot of regret for how I lived most of my 20s, 30s, and even 40s, in terms of goals and growth being having more of something or bigger of something. So
Hmm.
today, as I am well into the back nine of my life, um, my growth is actually dramatically changed, and my growth is how far can I take my brain when it is in 10 hertz? That's it. Wherever that takes me, whatever imagination, whatever thought, whatever feeling, whatever emotion that comes to me when I'm in that amazing brain state, is a gift. And
Hmm.
exploring where that gift of brain can take me, whatever it is, in the next moment only. So it's not at the end of the day, it's not even the week, it's not even the month, it's not even a thing. It's
Hmm.
where can my 10 hertz take me? And I
Hmm.
and I've found so much joy, so much peace, so much confidence, so much empowerment in knowing all I have to do to be the best version of myself, is get my brain to that state and then be open to all kinds of possibilities that come from that state.
Hmm. Yeah. No, that's beautiful. I mean, um, that that resonates with me on a very high level. And what I'm curious about is if you wouldn't mind, if you could elaborate to our audience. I mean, when you're talking about 10 hertz, what does that mean to the average individual that may not be familiar with different wave states in the brain? I mean, alpha, theta, 10 hertz being a very specific resonance. Why 10 hertz? What is it about
Yeah.
that particular state? What does that do for us?
Yeah, yeah. Great question, and I totally get it. I get when you hear frequencies and people kind of go to la la land and like, what is that kind of thing? So let me see if I can simplify it all. So, the brain has electricity.
Hmm.
I actually learned that for the first time, I think explicitly, probably in my early 30s. It
Hmm.
was very late in terms of, being a human being to find out that electricity is the language of the human brain. And oh, by the way, the human brain is something that you use every day for everything forever.
Hmm.
And it troubles me, Zach, that all of us, formally and informally, formally in schools and colleges and, coaches and mentors, and informally with our parents and life in general, we learned so many things about so many things,
Hmm.
but somehow someone forgot to include the course or the lesson on the one thing you are going to use for everything.
Yeah.
So, you
So true.
know, taking time to understand that electricity is a language of the brain, I don't want that to be like a nerdy thing or a neuroscience thing.
Hmm.
I want that to be everyday language, just like you learn how to do math or
Hmm.
geography or think about something or make a
Hmm.
decision or run or go swim. There's a language that we have to function in other parts of our life. So if you think about it, and one more qualifier, and then I'll explain 10 hertz, Zach, if you don't mind, for your
Hmm.
audience.
Please.
But if you think about it, Zach, it's a miracle design. Whatever you believe in, whether it's a type of a god or spiritual or you're whoever you are,
Hmm.
it's literally mind-blowing that we have electricity in our brain. Juxtapose that concept to electricity in other things like a light bulb or a phone or a kitchen microwave or whatever it is. Like all these other technologies or frameworks or entities that have electricity, they're plugged into something. They get the electricity from somewhere, from something. There's a source.
Hmm.
But look at us. We don't plug ourselves into anything when we go to bed, yet we
Right.
have that. And that
Hmm.
that's just mind-blowing to me that we have the exact type of electricity. Now, the one question you should ask before understanding what the electricity is, why?
Hmm.
Like, why is it not something else? Why is it not blood flow? Why is it not gravity? Why is it not light? Why is it
Hmm.
not osmosis? Why
Hmm.
is it not sound?
Hmm.
But if you think about it, it can't the fastest phenomenon in terms of speed that we know, Zach, is light.
Hmm.
But light cannot travel through opaque stuff. So it cannot go from your brain to your feet,
Hmm.
because it's got to go through all these body parts. And so electricity I think, is the second fastest thing that we know. And we need that. Like if I'm walking somewhere, Zach, and I see something black crawling, 8 feet in front of me, just just process this. I have to look at that thing. That photon from that object's got to go through my eyes, through my brain. I have to interpret that. I have to label
Hmm.
it. That's a snake. It's not a
Hmm.
stick. It's not a
Hmm.
baseball bat. It's a
Hmm.
snake. That label then says, is it good or bad? Is it nice? I mean, a snake is not a puppy,
Right.
so snake danger. And then once that label is done and a threat rating is given, I then turn around and jump the other way. I don't run at the snake and try to hop over it.
Hmm.
Like all that amazing functionality in our brain in terms of response to a stimulus in what, 2 seconds, right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, that's real. Like I just told you something very real.
Hmm.
But imagine, like, in order to facilitate all that external input, that labeling, that motor function to turn around and really run the right way, which is the other way,
Hmm.
and run at a speed, also not just walk away gently, but you want to run.
Yeah.
That takes electricity. So
Hmm.
now let's go to 10 hertz. So if you imagine a scale from 0 to 100, and Zach, oh my God, sometimes I feel like it's harder to simplify things. And I've worked very hard because it's so easy to complicate something that's complicated. I mean, the brain is
Hmm.
inherently complicated.
Hmm.
Um, so imagine, again, for the sake of simplicity, that we have a scale from 0 to 100, and it's like a gauge, if you would,
Okay.
like a speedometer, if you
Hmm.
would. And so imagine zero as the electrical state. So this is hertz, 0 to
Hmm.
100 hertz. That's the measure of the electricity. So imagine zero is when you're sleeping. So typically when we're sleeping, Zach, we're not doing anything. We're not holding our body up. We're not holding our neck up. We're not trying to coordinate where we need to go. We're not looking at something to make a decision.
Yeah.
We're in horizontal position sleeping, so the brain activity is low, and therefore the electricity or the energy being used is low.
Hmm.
Imagine 100 on the other end of that speedometer as you're yelling, you're screaming, you're throwing something, you're in grave danger. In those types of situations, you can imagine a lot of cognitive functionality has to take place because you're processing something, you got to make a good decision, there are consequences that are involved. So more parts of our brain and are being evolved.
Hmm.
So on that scale, 10 hertz from 0 to 100, I mean, intuitively is way low. It's way
Hmm.
down there. So what these 18,000 brain scans and they're actually more than that, but for the purposes of this, um, I looked into human beings, so real human beings, athletes, executives, myself, my son, in the seconds, and maybe a minute or two before they wanted to do something to the best of their ability. As an athlete, it's a little bit more obvious. If I'm a basketball player, I want to make the shot.
Hmm.
So that's the goal. And in 2, 3 seconds, I either make it or I miss it.
Hmm.
But for us regular people, the outcome is not that clear. If I'm thinking of, if I want to brainstorm something, if I want to respond to an email and say exactly the right thing, it's not as clear cut as I made the free throw, I made the putt, I made the pass, I kicked the ball, I passed it correctly. In the athletic realm, it's much easier to look at the brain and say, okay, did it work or did it not work? And I started to ask myself in those seconds before, an athlete initially, and then human beings in general, problem solving, collaboration, innovation, creativity, just not feeling stress. Before these amazing performances, is the brain in a certain state on that 1 to 100?
Hmm.
Honestly, I didn't know the answer to that question. And I knew that previous work had been done on alpha and theta, which is like a band, if you would.
Hmm. Hmm.
But I didn't know specifically, and technology became available where lay people, functionally, so as opposed to an academic setting or as opposed to being funded by some pharmaceutical company with biases, like my
Right.
clients were athletes and they didn't care about the science, they just want to make the shot, if you
Right.
know what I mean.
Yeah.
So the questions I asked were, is the brain in a certain state when we are the best version of ourselves? And the next question is the brain in a different state when we're not, when I miss the shot, when I miss the free throw, when I have a bad thought? So we call it a spike. And
Hmm.
the answer is yes. So it's not new that it's a low frequency, but I think what I discovered accidentally, I might add, is two magical things happen and then I'll pause at 10 hertz. And it's not exactly 10, but it's around 10. So let's say 8 to
Hmm.
about 12, but let's just go with 10 for now. The first magical thing that happens is because the frequency is low, imagine frequency as traffic or cars on a road.
Hmm.
At 10, there aren't that many cars on the road. So the roads would be our neural pathways or the synaptic function. So our brain is always talking to each other. Neurons talk to other neurons through synapses. It's like so all that when the traffic is low, then sensory input is amplified in the brain. In other words, there's room for sensory input to be processed by the brain. So sensory input is always available. It's always available. You're always seeing,
Hmm.
hearing, tasting something.
Hmm.
So I always tell people, like, imagine that you've had a long day at work, like 8 to 5 regular day, and it's been one bad meeting and Zoom call after another. At 5 o'clock, you're ready to go home. You got a 30-minute drive, and you put on your favorite playlist. And when you get home 30 minutes later, if I would ask you, hey, what did you listen to? Odds are you couldn't tell me. That
Yeah.
sensory input was there, but the
Hmm.
noise in your brain was so high that there wasn't room for it because it's a lower frequency, whereas the noise in your brain is a higher frequency. So those two clash and lower frequency will always lose.
Hmm.
So at 10 hertz, sensory input, which is always available to us, is amplified. So if you ask people the proverbial, I just want to be present, I want to be in the moment, you've heard those cliches, right?
Hmm.
What does that actually mean? I want to argue from a neuroscience perspective that when you are completely present, when you're in this moment and nowhere else, then everything you're seeing more things, feeling more things, hearing more things, tasting more things. Not that those channels weren't open, but now there's room in the brain for those for that input through the thalamus, this sort of grand central station of where sensory input comes in. That's now it's got room to sort of talk to other parts of your brain. So one magical things that happens at 10 hertz is sensory input is amplified. So for an athlete, if I'm trying to make a free throw, I can feel the ball in my hand. I can really feel the tension in each finger. That rim, I see 10 things on that rim because I'm
Mm-hmm.
at 10 hertz. If I'm at 40, 50, 60 hertz, I'm only seeing the rim
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to all the things that create the scale of the rim. So in
Mm-hmm.
athletic performance, 10 hertz is magical because now you're reacting to whatever is going on as opposed to thinking about what is going on, because then you're not an athlete. It's
Mm-hmm.
not chess.
Mm-hmm.
The second magical thing that happens, and I'll pause after this, is our cognitive functionality. And there are many parts to that statement, but to simplify it, I just want to call it access, meaning every given moment when something happens to you, anything that happens to you, your brain does not go to ChatGPT or Google and say, "Hey, this is what this person said, or this is what I'm seeing, or this is what I'm looking at. Can you help me interpret that?" If our brains did that, it might give a more holistic and more objective view.
Mm-hmm.
But our brain is still doing that, but only accessing our inventory, our life's experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And it's using our life experiences, that inventory, that hard drive to make sense of what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, our brains are the most biased,
Yeah.
inventory there is because it's only limited to what the inventory that you have, and your brain is making sense of it in microseconds. Now,
Mm-hmm.
at 10 hertz, it turns out that we access the right inventory meaning all of the life experiences that we've already had related to the current situation that can help you make a better decision. So when athletes typically call me or head coaches, one of the most common things that they say is, "I don't have any confidence. I've lost confidence." But if you think about that, what is confidence? Because confidence is not a thing per se.
Belief.
Your nose is a thing. Well, it's not even a belief because even a belief is
Mm-hmm.
not a thing. Your nose is a thing. Your neuron is a thing. Your stomach is a thing. Your lung is a thing. These are words that we have come up with. I want to argue from a neuroscience perspective is that what gives us belief or confidence or feeling empowered is in a given moment, if you access the right inventory, meaning, oh, I remember what the coach told me. Oh, I remember I did this 2 games ago. Oh, I remember an article that I read. I remember a video that I saw. If you're accessing that inventory, then you say, oh, I got this. I can handle this.
Mm-hmm.
Conversely, if you access, oh, I missed this shot, a few minutes ago. My coach yelled at me. My parents are sort of thinking and watching in the stands, I'm going to get yelled at. If you access that inventory, then you have no confidence because your sensory input is completely swallowed.
Mm-hmm.
So the two magical things that happen at 10 hertz, number one is sensory input is amplified, and two, access to the right inventory is there. And
Mm-hmm.
those two moments coming together at 10 hertz is magic.
Mm-hmm.
That's why my answer to your first question was when those two moments happen, I don't even have, when I am challenged by something, I don't even have a goal. I don't even tell myself, let me get through this thing, let me achieve this, or because I don't know what the capacity of my brain is, but
Mm-hmm.
I say, let me get to 10 hertz. And then if I'm at 10, if I can get myself to 10, then that next moment after that, seconds or minutes after that, my brain will go retrieve all kinds of things. And it very likely that the goals that I initially had in my 20s and 30s were actually limiting goals, which I know sounds like
Mm-hmm.
an oxymoron. But how do you know what your capacity is?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the magic. That's when you live in awe. And to wrap up, the argument that I make in my book, Life Explained, Chasing 10 Hertz, that's the subtitle of the book, is I found that you only need to be in that state once or twice a day. If you are the best version of yourself, if you're at 10 hertz in only your identified key moments, not everything, But the moments that matter the most to you, whatever they might be, professional or personal, in that moment, if it's on your calendar and you know when it's going to be, in that moment, you do things that get you to 10 hertz. You stay in 10 hertz. And if you get out of it, you get back in it. You know, I find that when you do what you want to do, what you need to do to the best of your ability, then there's a cascaded impact.
Mm,
Instead of trying to be the best version of yourself at everything all day long, all month long, all week long, it's not time that you need. It's not resources that you need. It's not money that you need. It's getting to 10 hertz.
mm,
And that then unravels magic. And
mm,
just think about this, Zach. I'm basically telling humankind that no matter what you face in life, the first step, the first solution is get to 10. And then let the magic of your brain figure out what next to do.
mm. Thank you for that explanation and I mean, both the breadth and depth that you peeled back and explored. I mean, there's so much to unpack. I'm not totally sure where to even start. My brain is trying to assess this both from a standpoint of, behavioral psychology. I started getting questions around quantum mechanics and, the actual interplay of the quantum world and when it comes to thought processes and influence. And I started thinking about anything from intrinsic and extrinsic memories. It's not just the fact that we have all of our blueprints, our filters from our past life experiences, but those that have been passed down from generations before us. And I think one of the big things that I heard from you there is and several things is, one of the superpowers of being at 10 hertz is we gotta decongest the highway. When things can
Yes.
flow and communicate more effectively, we become more receptive to find the right information. And when I was thinking about it from a standpoint of behavioral psychology, I was thinking, well, a lot of people have these ingrained patterns, these filters, these beliefs, and you mentioned it before, that can potentially set them up for self-sabotage in different areas. And what I heard from you, and please correct me if I heard you incorrectly, was it's not even so much about whether we've developed the right or wrong filters or beliefs or patterns. There are still empowering thoughts in there, and getting to 10 hertz allows us to access the most powerful information while, I mean, I don't know if I want to say compartmentalizing, but while,
Accessing.
yeah, exactly. Focus on the best and ignore the rest. Maybe that might be a good way to oversimplify it and look at
Yeah.
it. Are those
Yeah.
appropriate observations?
Yeah, look, I think part of the challenge we have as human being right now is we have been using, in my opinion, old frameworks,
Hmm.
and they worked when we didn't understand how the brain works. So, in what you just said, and again, Zach,
Hmm.
this is a collaboration. There's no
Hmm.
judgment up here. I'm a deeply
Yeah.
flawed human being, I promise you. But you used a ton of cliches. You used a ton of frameworks, whether it's behavioral psychology or all kinds of stuff.
Hmm.
And the analogy that I always use is I remember when COVID happened, my son and I, because we didn't have anything to do, decided to clean out our three-car garage. And we'd been living in that house 20 some years. So you can imagine what was dumped in the garage. So he and I decided to clean out the garage. And he was cleaning a shelf on the top of one top shelf, and he found a road atlas. And he was like, Dad, what is this? He didn't know what that was. And I looked at it like,
Right.
oh my God. And it was that 11 by 17, I'm showing my age now, that used to be in every car. And you open each page and you had states and you had towns and all the roads going over there. And I said, well, this is how we used to navigate where we wanted to go. And he was like, why didn't they just use GPS? I was like, dude, because we didn't have it.
Yeah.
And so could you use the road atlas today? Sure, you could, but it would take
Hmm.
longer. You wouldn't get
Hmm.
traffic
Hmm.
information. So it's not wrong, and we need to honor the fact that, we have had our ancestors came up with ways that, to the best of their ability, thought they could help us understand. Even scientists like psychologists, in my view, came up with frameworks to help us understand and navigate trauma and life and those kinds of things. But I think now we have a GPS, and to me, and again, I know some people are not going to like this, and I apologize. It's not my intention to be controversial at all, or even a contrarian. I don't want to do that, but I also want to speak my truth.
Hmm.
And so I honor psychologists, I honor spirituality, I honor these other frameworks that we have been using because they helped millions and millions of people. But we now have access to the human brain. I would argue that all those frameworks are they're noisy in itself. We are using so many cliches. And when I coach athletes and I coach head coaches and I coach senior executives, I tell them the more cliches that you use in your language, that's an admission that you don't really understand what's going on, right? Because it's a catch-all. Get rid of those. Why not just say, am I at 10 hertz and educate yourself at 20, at 30, at 40, 50? If I'm at 80 hertz, the kinds of thing that I need to do to get to 10 is far more sophisticated than if I were at 20. If
Hmm.
I were at 20, I could do some breathing exercises and that would cut it. I could get to 11, 12, 15 hertz and that would be good enough. If I'm yelling and screaming, breathing's not going to help. It'll
Hmm.
reduce it, but you'll still be around 50, 60 hertz. So our ancestors, for example, the yogis, I'm a yogi, by the way, I do it almost every single day. But at that time, we just knew, oh, if I breathe in certain patterns, whether it's pyramid or box or all these other types of breathing, which are wonderful techniques to do, I seem to feel better. I seem to be calm. Even the
Hmm.
word calm is not a thing per se.
Hmm. Hmm.
But we were limited to just simply that. Now, with this technology, I can look in the brain because I know what calm means. I know what focus means. I know what empowered means. I know what being in the zone means. Even flow is not a thing. For flow came from the word overflow, which means I just felt like everything was amplified in my brain and I wasn't thinking of too many things. So we're using all these terms that are not real. Like you would never
Hmm.
go to a doctor and the doctor is examining you and saying, "Oh, it doesn't look like you're in flow state when you have a bum knee." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so to me, it's just so much easier for us to educate ourselves on a simple 0 to 100 scale, which is largely correct, by the way. It's not a made up scale.
Hmm.
And so let's do one right now, right? Let's do
Hmm.
what we call a neurohack. And
Yeah.
and I'm going to show, and we'll do two or three, by the way. But let's do one right now to show you how simple it is, number one, to get to 10 hertz. And number two, how the framework of like, who cares what your background is? Who cares how much money you have right now? Who cares how many resources you have right now? Who cares how much trauma you have right now? All of that can be suspended in a few seconds to do what you need to do next to the best of your ability. All right?
Amazing.
So
Okay.
that's
Hmm.
where neurohacks come in.
Hmm.
So I used to think that, by the way, I used to think that, I needed all this therapy and and by the way, that's a good model for people that need that kind of work who are debilitated by the trauma. They need that. But
Hmm.
most of us don't need that. Most of us just, we're just being held slaves to an old framework and not really understanding how the brain works. So
Hmm.
let's do a neurohack right now. Okay.
Okay. Hmm.
So don't start until I say go, and we'll do about three of these. Don't start until I
Okay.
say go because I need to explain this. And for those of your audience that are listening, they can do it too. But for them too, don't start until I say go very loudly so that I can explain to you. When I say go very loudly, which is not now, I want you to count from 1 to 10, literally, as fast as you can, as long as you can say the numbers. Don't blah, 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 blah. That's not saying the numbers. So go from 1 to 10 as fast as you can, not now. As soon as you get to 10, go backwards 9, all the way back to 1, the opposite way. Take your time. Go from 10 to 9 to 8 as slow as you can.
Hmm.
Ready?
And are
Are
we
you
doing
ready?
this out loud or just in my head?
Just in your head.
Okay.
Okay? And go. Okay?
That's a fascinating
So when you went
experience.
from 1 to 10 on the
Hmm.
first leg, can you tell me what that felt like, if you don't mind?
Um, Forced,
Forced.
rushed,
Okay?
rapid.
Crushed.
Hmm. Hmm.
If I were measuring you, which I've done
Hmm.
thousands of times, I will tell you that I spiked you and
Hmm.
you shut up. because you were trying to be logical. I gave you an instruction, you were doing a task, so you spiked up. I don't know where because I can measure you exactly, but typically around 40, 50, 60 hertz, depending on where you started. Now, what did you feel like going 10 backwards to one?
Uh, Initially, there was that little bit of that transition, but I immediately, after I hit 9 and 8, my brain was trying to keep up with the same tempo, and then the logical mind kicks in and says, "Wait, you can take more time." But I just actually organically, after 7 or 8, felt myself just start to drop into a very eased tempo, and it continued to slow and I don't want to say stabilize, but just hit the sense of calm.
Yes. Exactly. So all those, even I don't know if people are watching, but when you used your hands and you put your hands up and you made it go down,
Hmm.
literally on that 0 to 100 scale, that was happening when you say calm and stabilize. Again, these are cliches and words, but if I were to measure you, I can promise you I got you in the teens for sure. And I could
Hmm.
see that on your cheekbones because I've visually measured this and looked at people,
Hmm.
and I can't even describe it, but your face begins to relax. And I
Yeah.
will tell you that if you had to do a task in the next 2 or 3 minutes without me talking to you, so let's say that you did that on your own, and I'm
Hmm.
not debriefing with you the way I am. If you did that, I will tell you that for the next minute or two, you would have more access to the right inventory in your brain, and you would feel and hear more things, and you would come up with a better answer than without doing it. Now, question, how long did it take you to do that? So I call that neurohack the 10-10. How long did it
Hmm.
take you to do the 10-10?
Maybe 15, 20 seconds.
Okay, what equipment did you need to do that?
Absolutely nothing. My own mind.
What change of clothes did you need to do that?
No, and I got to wear the same thing.
Exactly. Did you have to be in a certain location to do
No,
that? No.
anywhere.
Did you have to buy something to do that?
Not at all.
No. Did you need someone's permission to do that?
Not at all.
No. So that's an example of where I'm actually afraid sometimes to teach people this because, I'm trying to convince people that by virtue of being human, they already have the most sophisticated computer in the world, which is their brain. And what they
Hmm.
need to access the supercomputer, they already have in them.
Hmm.
Right. So that was a count. We can do another one right now. So let's do another one right now,
Sure.
right?
All right.
So again, don't start until I say go. Let's put your hands together like so. Okay, so I'm basically asking people, for those of you who cannot see, to put your hands in front of your face about, I don't know, maybe 6, 8 inches apart. Now, don't start until I say go. This is very important. When I say go, which is not now, I want you to start with your right hand, and I want you to imagine this is a mountain and your fingers are legs. I want you to climb up 3 times, not now, very fast, just very fast. And then I want you to climb 3 times very slow. In the slow climb up, I want you to feel the tip of your finger on your right hand and the skin of your left hand. Go. Okay, same thing. What did the first three feel like compared to the last three?
Chaos, calm.
There you go. And how often do you have your hands on you?
24/7.
Exactly. That was a joke. But my
Yeah.
point again is if I were measuring you,
Yeah.
when you did that second three climb, right? The slow
Hmm.
one where you're feeling that sensory input between your tips and your hand. And I did the left hand on purpose because it's connected to your heart,
Hmm.
on the left side. So instead of me explaining all the neuroscience about how the vagus nerve works and how the brain works, da da da, I'm basically trying to tell people get rid of all of the road atlas language and frameworks and just say, where am I from 0 to 10? And what can I do in any given moment with what I already have on me to get towards 10, maybe not at 10? And then orchestrate the next 2 or 3 minutes.
Mm.
So these are called neurohacks. And I'm originally, I mean, I'm from Africa. I was raised there, and I grew up with so many biases, like cultural biases, ethnic biases, that all of these neurohacks, and I've curated about I don't know, 400 of these now, measured them all, and all of them are numbered using numbers. All their names are numbers. Like I don't have a Western name and Eastern name. They're not named after me. But numbers is a very agnostic language. Like the first one
Hmm.
that we did was 1010. This one is called three Fs for three fields. Because I want people around the world, as well as children, to say, okay, I just need to do 1010. I just need to do 3F, as opposed to try to recruit some psychological framework or some behavioral sciences and some, we've made things so complicated. It is so much easier to say to yourself, I just need to be the best version of myself, irrespective of all the drama in my life, irrespective of all the drama in my past, irrespective of where I need to be tomorrow or an hour from now. I just need to get to 10 hertz when I need to. That's
Mm.
it. That is it. That's the simplicity of life. And I can do that using what is already on my body to get my brain to access the limits of its imagination, the limits of its creativity, the limits of its emotions like compassion and kindness. I
Hmm.
find that people are incredibly compassionate at 10 hertz, not because they're suddenly good people, but because at 10 hertz, their self-awareness of what is happening around them increases. They see somebody falling, they see someone crying, and then they access the inventory in their brain where they felt some similar pain, and now they go to that person and help them organically. So
Hmm.
kindness is not a skill, it's an access issue. Confidence is not a skill, it's an access issue. But high performance is not a skill, it's an access issue. In
Mm.
any given moment, if I can access the existing inventory in my brain, I mean, just think about all the inventory that we pile up on one human day.
Oh yeah.
Look at
Hmm.
the laptop or what you see on your phone or the people that you talk to. And now, however older you are, you have enough inventory. There have been enough voices and experience in your life that we already know. I feel by age 20, even though you don't have skills to do many things, there are enough skills and inventory to have a great, rich human experience for the rest of your life.
Hmm.
We just need access to it.
Dr. Izzy, I mean, this has been nothing shy of an amazing episode thus far. I mean, I don't know where the last 35 minutes have gone, and I mean that with the utmost level of sincerity and uh, yeah, of just sincerity. I mean, it's been absolutely incredible. I mean, my brain's already going. We need to get you back on another time because there's so much to unpack here. What I would like to do is number one, thank you for sharing both those gifts and strategies. I mean, I can very much feel the difference. And you mentioned the muscles in my face beginning to relax. I mean, it's energetically everything in me shifted, and what a gift. So thank you for sharing that. And I love how you've done such a good job of isolating that one of the problems today is that we are overthinking and overstructuring everything, and so much of it of fulfillment and success on any level, or at least our ability to optimize at our highest level, our highest best version of ourselves is just tapping into the appropriate energetic field. And I think that is a very simple but complex conversation at the same time. I mean, there's what I would love to do, I want to take just a step back for a minute. Because I know, for me and many experts that I know, there's a lot of who we have become and the things that we have created in our lives have stemmed from a variety of different impetus, different traumas and past experiences. And, how, what led you down this path? I mean, what was the driving force for you? You mentioned the power of why before. I mean, was this something that you became so passionate about? When did you start to connect the dots? I mean, talk a little bit more about your journey into the exploration and execution, I guess you could say, of this 10 hertz philosophy and many of these different tools and strategies that you're teaching. And and I also want to come back to something that you said too, that we really only need to tap into this about twice a day, but by doing so consciously, that will actually, if I heard you correctly, put us more in that energetic field more often. So if you would talk just a little bit more about your story history, I'm just so curious.
Yeah, I'll give you. I know we're almost out of time, so I'll give you the Cliff Notes version of it. But look, I'm the sixth out of seven children.
Mm,
So I was way down. I had three older brothers, two older sisters. I grew up in like 1,000 square foot home in Africa.
mhm.
And by the time I came along, I don't know that I had much of a voice in my house. I was a kid, and there were so many people on top of me. Mom, dad, plus five older brothers and sisters. And I think because I couldn't speak per se, not literally, figuratively,
Mm,
I tended to be much more introspective. And, I've had uh, my share of trauma multiple times over. And I just found every model that was out there not completely satisfying. There were parts of it that worked and helped me, but most of it didn't. And so I kept looking. I kept looking. A lot of it was to heal myself, and just make sense of it. And it wasn't until I stumbled on neuroscience and electricity that I found the most objective way that wasn't biased. There wasn't a hidden agenda. Neuroscience doesn't want any money from you. Like once you've learned the 10-10 or the 3F that you just did, like you're done. I mean, you don't have to pay me to do that. You don't have to pay anybody to do that. You know what I mean? It's not a
mhm,
subscription. It's not a model. So, I think that, you know, when you've told yourself that you're not going to take yourself out of the game of life,
mhm.
and because those thoughts did cross my head, and you say, no, I'm going to stay in it, and I'm going to keep searching. The old adage is never trust the man who has the answers, always trust the man who is searching for them. And
Mm,
in many
yeah.
ways, I've always been searching. I've always been
Mm,
searching. I've always been searching. And then I stumbled on it. It wasn't, like I said, I was in my 30s when someone told me there's electricity in the brain. I was like, what? Like, how is it that nobody in all of my education even mentioned that?
mhm,
So, and then to wrap up, yes, I think part of what in my book, Life Explained, Chasing 10 Hertz, the last chapter, and maybe we can end on this ironically,
mhm,
coincidentally, I named my last chapter Occam's Razor
mhm,
in this book that just came out. Because if you know that concept, and for those of your listeners that don't, but he basically said, because many of life's challenges are complex, and they are complex, we then believe that the solution has to be equally complex.
mhm.
And I give example after example in that last chapter where over and over again we find that in fact, some of the most amazing solutions are actually quite simple.
Mhm.
And I think bringing simplicity to the most complex organ or phenomenon in the human experience, which is our brain, there's nothing more complicated in all of human history or mankind, in my opinion, than the human brain.
Mhm.
I mean, where else can a past and a future come together? Where
Yeah.
else can you dream about something that hasn't happened? Where
Yeah.
else can you remember something that your mom said to you when you were 6 years old and now you're 60 years old?
Right.
I mean, that's magic. That's
Mhm.
just magic. And you can close your eyes and you can see your mom's face and hear her laughter, and she's been dead for 10 plus years. That's magic. So we have to make it easy. We have to simplify our understanding of something very complex and make our navigation of each day complex. To ask yourself to be the best version of yourself for 30 seconds before you do two important things each day. I mean, Zach, that's doable. That's a reasonable ask,
Mhm. It
right?
very much is. And Dr. Izzy, that's one question I have. Is there, and maybe this is overanalyzing and asking too many questions and not just trusting the power of presence. It's almost like I'm afraid to put a label to anything now because you've done such a phenomenal job of illustrating how unimportant it is most of the time. And it's about putting ourselves into that state of presence. But is there
Yes.
anything? Is there any reason not to do it multiple times a day? Are you making that 1 to 2 times a day suggestion just due to the fact that most people try to overcomplicate it and they hear 10 and they won't do it? But For
Yeah.
me already,
So
I'm like, I want more,
yeah.
can I do it again in an hour? Is that all right?
Yeah, no, no. Look, there's no golden rule, but my suggestion is it's not two times a day. My
Hmm.
suggestion is the most important two times of the day,
Hmm.
right? And I have certain days where I only have one thing on that day where I absolutely, unequivocally need to be at 10.
Hmm.
Maybe I'm pitching to a customer. Maybe I'm having conversation with one of my children and I really want to be present. I don't want my brain to be thinking about the million things really that I have to do or that I just came from.
Hmm.
Having those million thoughts does not make me a bad dad or a bad person. It makes me human.
Hmm.
Now, to have that inventory playing in my brain while I'm having lunch with my daughter is awful. I don't like that feeling.
Yeah.
So there are certain days where being with my daughter, who's in college now, by the way, so she's gone. I'm an empty
Hmm.
nester. Is the spice of my day, of my
Hmm.
year, of my month. Because it doesn't
Hmm.
happen that often anymore. So
Yeah.
it's not two times a day per se. It's the two most important times. When I work with athletes, like say a professional golfer, for example, if they're walking between shots, like you don't have to be perfect. But when you're over the ball and you're about to pull the trigger and hit a golf shot or make a free throw or throw a ball or think of an idea or think of what to say to your daughter so that she knows that you're fully present and you ask the right question, you said the right thing where she looks at you and pays attention, that's magic. That's what I want. I wanted to always know that whatever she said, I responded in a way that, it creates an inventory for her so that when she becomes a mom, or my son becomes a dad, they can tell my grandchildren, my dad used to say this, or this used to
Hmm.
happen. Like that's magic.
Yeah.
That's what we all want. So it's pick the two most important days of your life, and then trust yourself that if you do those two, this just by osmosis, don't overdo it.
Hmm. Hmm.
So it's a simple ask, it's a reasonable ask, and I think it's
Hmm.
the right ask.
Yeah. No, thank you. I mean, what a gift, Dr. Izzy. I mean, genuinely, this episode, I was excited to interview you to begin with, but you took that excitement to a whole nother level. Like I say, I think I would love to invite you back on a future episode because there's a lot more to
That'd be great.
discuss here. Now, for anyone who's listening and says, I want access to my next level of focus and clarity. I mean, what's the best step? What's the best way to get in touch with you? I mean, is it your Neurofy 80 program? Is it your books? Is there a certification website? How do our listeners get in touch?
Yeah, well, thank you. So, if you go to my website, which is drizzyjustice.com, all of my content and material, YouTube, other podcasts that I've done are there.
Hmm.
But I really want to share with you that, I just finished my 10th book. It came out about a month or so ago. And it's my 10th book. So I've written lots of books, and books are like children. But
Hmm. Hmm.
this one is my best anything. I wrote
Hmm.
it in 10 hertz. And the reason I consider it my best, and I know every author will say that, is because I I made it easy for myself to make it easy for the reader.
Hmm. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
like Occam's razor, chapter
Hmm.
10. I mean, I
Hmm.
can literally tell you the moment that I was struggling with how to end it. And this book that I read in grad school that my professor made me read, which I hadn't read in 20 plus years, Occam's Razor, it was a chapter in one book. It wasn't even the book. And
Hmm.
my memory retrieved that. And I was like, oh my gosh, what a great way to sort of wrap up the book. So
Hmm.
Life Explained, Chasing 10 Hertz. Um, I truly I didn't write that for me.
Yeah.
I could care less what that does for me, but I do care that, I have a feeling if I may, I don't mean for this to sound arrogant. I really
Hmm.
don't, but I think someone could read it 50 years from now and be able to navigate their human experience 50 years from now better. And I
Yeah.
wrote that. I wrote it so that it could withstand all the changes that we have, because through all these changes, we will always have a brain. Human beings will have a brain, and their
Hmm.
brain will be their primary paintbrush.
Yeah.
for the
Yeah.
narrative of their human experience.
Yes. Well, I can tell you just in the few moments that we've had together, I've felt an internal transformation. And again, to me, that's an absolute blessing and a gift. So thank you for sharing that with me and both with our listeners and audience. And for our audience, if today's episode challenged you, I want you to do something. Pick one moment tomorrow, just one, where you decide that you are going to be the best version of you. Maybe it's a conversation, a presentation, a workout, a leadership decision. Win that moment. Because as Dr. Izzy just reminded us, it only takes seconds. So if you found this episode valuable, make sure to follow the show, share it with someone who's chasing peak performance, and leave a review. And remember, growth doesn't happen by chance. It happens by choice. Look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Dr. Izzy, thank you so much for today.
All right, cheers.